Welcome back, everybody. My name is Gecko Lacau, and this is Man Bites Retro. And what we do here, every week there's a new voice that brings forward their favorite person in film history, and we present that voice to you. So please stay tuned for the show. Yes, indeed, another episode of Man Bites Retro, and this is a continuation of my top 5 films of all time, and this week we are doing my number 5, which is Cabin in the Woods. This is such an amazing movie, first of all, and it's honestly the most recent film on my list. This is a 2012 film, runs about an hour and 30 minutes, and it is directed by Drew Goddard and written by Joss Whedon. So, writer of Avengers, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, all those guys. And Drew Goddard, of course. Now, it stars Kristen Connolly, Chris Hemsworth, Anna Hutchinson, Frank Krantz, Richard Jenkins, Bradley Whitford, and a whole bunch of others. Amy Ackert is in there as well. It's an all-star cast, honestly. And then on top of that, you have new and upcoming actors like Frank Krantz. He is a phenomenal actor, first of all. He does like this amazing role of this stoner, kind of enlightened person above everybody else. And he is one of those people, like, yeah, he comes off as a stoner, comes off as a jackass, comes off as the person that doesn't know jack shit and just has a bunch of conspiracy theories. But in the end, his conspiracy theories are right. And he kind of lets everybody know, like, oh, we're all puppets in this game of life and all this stuff, in this awesome dialogue of exposition that it's just so well written, so well directed, and each of these characters are flushed out in what is basically a B horror film. But it's done in a way that it doesn't take itself serious, but it could be if it wanted to. And it has the justification to be taken serious. So, and it poses a lot of interesting questions. And I think in this episode we're going to go into some of those questions that it poses. So, right off the bat, the whole story is, we start off in the movie basically in an office setting with two office personnel. We think they're supervisors, of course. That's what it kind of portrays. And they're just talking about their wives and all the random things that are going on and a bet that's going on about something that's about to occur. Then suddenly the credits drop, first of all, in an amazing way. And that makes you jump scare real quick. And then it hard stops right into the lives of these teenagers, very much like any other horror movie ever done in the 90s and early 2000s. It goes straight into their lives, and it kind of creates what these characters are. In the first scene, it establishes who they are, what they are, and what they're going to be in the story. The normal cliches of a horror film. And there's a very glorious scene where Frank Krantz, and you'll start hearing his name a lot in this episode because he is my, the honorary actor in this film. He is the best one in it, and he is phenomenal in it. So he basically comes in like this stupor of weed smoke car, and with the windows down and all this stuff, and all his friends are looking at him like, oh my god, what are you doing? You're driving in the middle of the day completely stoned as fuck. And he's like, He comes out of the car and pulls out the bong that he has. He has this giant bong with him in the front seat. And it's a thermostat. It's a what do you call it? A thermos. And like a coffee thermos. It's just glorious. And I actually found out that they actually did make this. And it is a prop that you could actually purchase, which is pretty cool. It's an extendable thermos, and it just kind of extends out into its own thing, and it turns into a bong. The handle turns into where you put all the weed and everything, and it's just glorious, and it's so well done. and it's played for laughs, but there's no stop. There's no moment to stop in the film, and that I love that because it's like, all right, even if it's not funny, let's continue on. It's building the character, which it does very well, and he goes off on this whole spiel of why would anybody stop a person that is crazy enough to have a giant bong in their front seat and have a car that's filled with weed smoke coming out of it. Nobody's going to stop a person like that because they know this person is quote unquote enlightened. And he kind of plays that off so well. And then we go into what they're doing, why they're all getting together, and we find out that they're actually going on this journey to the main character's cousin's cabin in the woods, thus the title of the film. Then they're driving along and all this stuff and, building the character moments and all that. And then they stop at this random gas station with one of the funniest lines in the whole film. It's this old geezer that runs this gas station doesn't have credit cards. It's literally like something from ancient times, right? And the geezer that comes out is hilarious, and he builds this whole like sense of dread and like a racist son of a bitch and all that stuff, and it just comes off so well in the film and just plays so good with the characters and just does a great job, honestly. And then they go to the cabin, they find the cabin, they start going on the regular thing that every horror movie has, which is basically the kids, teenagers having fun, sex, drugs, all that stuff, but it's juxtapositioned with an office setting, and we keep delving deeper into what is happening in this office, and we find out that they are controlling things somewhere, and they're controlling the events that occur in a certain situation. And you're wondering why, you're wondering how, you're wondering what the hell are they doing. And it builds this tension and this suspense. Now, here on out, guys, this is going to be spoilers. It will have a lot of things that you don't want to know ahead of time. So if you have not seen Cabin in the Woods, please turn this off and come back and after you watch it and continue on with the episode. But you have to, watch the film. Don't watch the spoilers, because don't listen to the spoilers, because it will ruin everything for you. Fair warning, spoilers. And from here on out, basically, the story delves into the fact that we know that this office setting is controlling what is going on upstairs. Now, we don't know the extent of it until things start metaphorically shit is hitting the fan, and everything starts breaking down and happening. Now, this is so glorious and so great that I actually had to find the list of all the monsters that are in this scene, because there's over 137 monsters. So I'm not going to go into all of them, but I want to choose some of the ones that really stood out to me. Obviously, the merman, because yes, 100% yes. The unicorn, which was an odd monster until you see what it does, and you're like, wow, that's freaking cool, man. Yeah. The kraken, which obviously is tentacles, and it plays a really cool scene. The werewolf. The Army of Darkness. Now, this is actually really cool. The zombies. The Cyclops. Demon, which is basically your normal demon. Troll. An alien. Giant. Bigfoot. Werewolf. Minotaur. Then there's obviously the clowns. There is also one of my favorites, which is super cool, is the bats, the masked people from Sugar and Spice, which is actually really freaking cool, and the twins from The Shining are in there as well. And last but not least, the two best ones is the Sugar Plum Fairy and the Hellraiser wannabe character, which he is phenomenal and just stands out on his own thing there, because it's just fantastic and just amazing to see him in there. And the way that he plays it, he kind of plays it, downplays it into like this subtle character and all that stuff. So they see this while going down into basically what's called zoology, and it has like these cubes with all these monsters in it, and it is so glorious when they finally get down and they're in this base and they're like, I don't know what to do. They're getting hunted by the people, the officers and all that stuff, and they decide like, oh, I'm gonna jump into the control room and I'm gonna make it a point to eject every monster out. So they hit this huge red button, and it unveils everything. All these characters, all these creatures, all these monsters come out in the most glorious 15 minutes of cinema. This is just wonderful. And the way that this just unfolds is so great and so magnificent. It just completely sets on its own pace. And then we get all the events that unfold. I don't want to go into those because even if you've seen it, you know what happens, and it's very interesting. But we'll go into the psychology of it right now. So then some of the other stuff that we go into is the psychology behind it, which a lot of it is honestly the aspect of it's a huge social commentary about how we look at horror movies, how we look at horrific things in life. What are we actually doing when we watch horror movies? Are we just watching it for the shits and giggles and thrill of it? Are we looking at it as a commentary on society in general? And that's why we fit into these 5 cliches: the stoner, or the comedian, the jock, the slut, the virgin, and all the other ones that are part of it. Do we put and fit our society into that? And the intellectual, and what do we fit our society into those 5 molds? And do we kind of identify with one mold so we become part of that cliche? Or is it that we do the cliche because it is the truth, that our society revolves around these 5 cliches, and that everybody could fit into at least one, if not 2? So horror movies kind of play on those tropes of that, and they go into the sociological aspect of the interactions with the characters and why they're doing such a thing and why are we seeing serial killers and all these other things. Now this film goes into the fact that maybe we have such a fascination with it because it is our way of moving past traumas and kind of being able to fear something that is tangible, something that we could control. By doing movies, we have control. By having fear of these monsters, we have control of our fears. We have control of what is being shown and what we fear. Instead of having something that we're afraid of, like bad news or things like that are really terrifying. Death in the families, death of loved ones, all that stuff. We concentrate on these fears of arbitrary things that cannot really do damage, or they're legends and folklore that are not real. Because maybe if we put all our effort and all our fear into something that's not tangible, not real here, then we could kind of create this kind of dissociative attempt to handle the fear that we feel in real life. And maybe these films are impacting us on a sociological level as well, because maybe we are not allowing ourselves to deal with grief, to deal with fear in the appropriate way. Since these films started coming out, we kind of have this very touchy subject and this very taboo about certain subjects, like divorce, like death, like sex. All these things are all taboo subjects because people fear it. So what happens if we don't have movies like this? If we don't have situations like this, like we have to please these gods. And these gods, what are they? Are they a representation of us as people, as society? And we can't cope with anything if we don't have these gods that are wanting to be pleased by seeing these horrific events unfold. Now, if that's the case, that's very fascinating because we actually get to see the development of sociological issues in a horror film that's meant to be a comedy. But if you delve deeper into the psychology behind it, you start seeing like there's a lot more to this film than just, oh, let's just have fun with these monsters and kill people randomly. There's a lot to it. Each of these characters portray different moments of grief and different moments where they're actually feeling something, which is amazing. And the jester, the stoner, played by Frank Kranz, he's basically this guy that knows the truth, that everything that he spits out is the truth and can't be manipulated. The chemistry department is in the movie is saying, oh, we pumped him so full of drugs that he should be out cold, but he's not. He's seeing the truth. So what is that on us? What is that a depiction of? Is that a depiction of that society maybe needs to be numb and completely void of what do you call it? We can't be lucid to be able to see the bigger picture, to see the Matrix, to see all these things that are behind the scenes, the puppeteers, as he puts it so elegantly. And that's very fascinating as well, because that goes into the whole story of the Illuminati and all these other things that are super fascinating. So this film has, at first, you look at it, and it has just basic layers on it. The more you peel back, you start seeing different things. You start seeing different characters. You start seeing different traits. You start seeing the true plot behind this film. And what is this a representation of? Because Drew Goddard is very good about writing multiple layers, and so is what do you call it? The other writer. I'm sorry, I blanked out on it. But either way, they're very good about writing multiple layers upon layers upon layers, and that's what they do in this film. So I think that this is done very well because it's a film that you could revisit. Now, I know in this past episodes and all that stuff, people have been, Brandon and William both have been kind of, oh, how do you get your ranking system? Well, honestly, the biggest part of my ranking system is watchability. How many times can you watch this movie? Now, movies that are complex and dense like this one is, even though it doesn't look like it, you could really delve deep into the psychology behind it. Those are movies that are rewatchable because you could see different things every time you watch it, and you stay entertained watching it multiple times. And it's entertaining as shit seeing these kids act all stupid, and even if you just want to have a dumb moment and not concentrate on all the underlying issues, you just want to be entertained, this is a good movie for that. And that's what I'm talking about in my rating system when I say that. So that's why I put this movie so high up there. This movie just came out, 7 years ago? And I've seen it a good number of times. I've seen this probably about 20 times. And it is one of my go-to to show people because I love it that much. Now, some of the other things that we could go into are pretty much the different aspects of why this film exists. Now, a lot of horror movies and all that stuff, they kind of tackle random subjects like sexuality and Halloween and dreamscapes and nightmares and what we face in our nightmares in Nightmare on Elm Street. And, everyone has a different aspect. The breaking and entering and that kind of fear-mongering of being abducted in your own house in Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer, all that stuff, that they play on fears of real life. Now, those films as well are escape for our fears of that. How can we overcome these fears? Which is very interesting to see that, because it's kind of an odd situation when you watch a horror movie, because first of all, you expect to be terrified, but the best horror movies are not about being terrified. They're about those subtle moments where it builds the tension and builds the momentum in such a way that you don't realize you're being terrified, and you feel this sense of dread and this kind of like white knuckling effect where you're gripping the pillow, you're gripping your significant other, you're gripping the armchair, and you're like, oh my god, is it gonna happen? And you have this tension that consumes you for the length of this film. Or the film makes you feel what the director wants you to feel, which is terrifying. This sense of dread that comes over you and encapsulates you and kind of makes you feel no other emotion other than this. Those are the truly terrifying movies that get under your skin, that turn into the psychological aspect, and that build on the dread of existing fears. Now, again, if you guys want to watch this movie, it's not streaming on any of the streaming networks currently, but you can purchase it and rent it, whatever the case is, on pretty much anywhere. And this is a 10 out of 10 for me. It's a solid movie, and it is just amazing what they do with it. And honestly, if you haven't seen this, please go watch this. If you sat through this and you got it spoiled, god damn it, why? But if you're in love with creature features, this is like the epitome of creature feature. So again, Cabin in the Woods, 2012 film, and directed by Drew Goddard, and it is an amazing movie. So I hope you guys liked this kind of behind the look of a horror movie and kind of going into the psychological aspect of it, like we did in this episode. And again, this is Man Bites Retro. My name is Lewis, and I'll see you guys next week for my last of my top 5 films.